Hello friends, welcome to the Seated Scribe, a channel where we discuss pens and writing, and I am Rudrashish Dotto. For today's pen review, we would look at two pens, Parker Beta and Parker Vector Metallix, both popular gifting items in this part of the world. Thanks to Parker's marketing strategy, both the Parker Beta and Parker Vector Metallix are neighborhood shop products, and both the pens evoke among many of us the fair share of emotion of being the first high school fountain pens. Without any delay, let us now look at the pens, and as I explore their pros and cons, I shall also be taking writing samples to test their suitability as introductory fountain pens among a flood of low-priced competitions across the world. Friends, let us now look at the pens. Friends, these are the two pens for review today. This is the Parker Beta. It's in a premium gold version, and this is the Parker Vector Metallix. Incidentally, this also comes with a complimentary Parker Quink ink. So let me now open the Parker Beta first. Well, as you can see, these punch holes which is there in the Beta as well as in the Vector Metallix, they are usually meant to be displayed in neighborhood shops, as I have said, and one of the primary reasons why these pens are pens which are popular is because they are visible as well as they are marketed down to the last shop that we find in this part of the world. So this is the Parker Beta Premium in gold version. They have supplied us with a Parker Quink cartridge, which I'll be putting in before I take the writing sample. Now, as we can see, the cap section of the Beta is metallic with the characteristic Parker clip, and the finial is flat at both ends. This end of the finial has a molded Parker logo. Okay, so the cap, as you can see, is carrying the Parker logo with the Parker written over it, and something inscribed here which I believe is the batch code or something like that. I'm not sure what this actually means, but it's a no-nonsense clip, and this is the pen. It is entirely made of plastic. It is entirely made of plastic, possibly injection molded. Okay, so they have supplied us with the characteristic Parker converter fitted into it, which has that steel ball to ensure surface tension of the ink inside this converter. So this is the characteristic Parker converter. Incidentally, compared to the cartridge that they have supplied, the converter will be carrying less ink, and this cartridge can also be reused, refilled with ink at this end, with the help of a syringe. So I will be using the cartridge for the writing sample of this pen. Now with regard to the barrel section, this barrel section is also of plastic. The barrel is thicker than usual, but I detect that repeated screwing and unscrewing of the beta can weaken this section, leading to cracks. In fact, we do have users who complain that this is perhaps the weakest point in the beta version of Parker pens. Now with regard to the grip section, I see that there are straighted matte finish strips, as it were, molded directly into the grip section to give a hold to a writer. And with regard to the nib is a typical Parker nib. Incidentally, this is a fine nib and the feed is plastic. So all in all, this is a very light pen to hold, to write and control, which is perhaps why Parker Beta is the most sought after pen, especially in this part of the world, to be given to people who are introduced to fountain pens for the first time in their writing. So this is the Parker Beta. I will be putting in this cartridge that they have supplied and then take a writing sample. Incidentally, with regard to most Parker pens, the cartridges are punctured at the wider end and not at the narrower end. Yes. So the cartridge is put in place and we'll take a writing sample soon. Now let me open the Vector Metallix. Vector Metallix come in sealed plastic blister packs like these. So let me open this part to get hold of the pen. Okay, let me keep this aside. So this is a plastic box that they have supplied with the pen, and it contains the characteristic Parker logo and the word Parker written here. And incidentally, both the Parker Beta and the Vector Metallix are meant to be sold in India and Nepal, for sale only in India and Nepal. This is what they say. In other words, these products are available in this version and in this price only in India and Nepal. So this is the Parker Vector Metallix. The cap section is slightly different from the Parker Beta in that they do not have this round white pasting. I guess this is a plastic that is securely pasted on top of this finial. So this cap is slightly different. The clips are similarly designed, and here too we have at the base of this cap the Parker logo and the Parker word inscribed, possibly hot molded. Alright, so this is the clip, and now we have the pen. This section is made of plastic. This is chrome, and the nib is slightly different from the nib of a beta. As we can see, the nib of the beta is fairly long, at least longer than the nib in the Vector Metallix, and the gripping section too is long in the beta. Yes, and here we have this is also a fine nibbed version. The gripping section meets the nib with a plastic rim, a slight step down and a step up at this point, which slightly protrudes out, and there is a step up of a millimeter or so, and incidentally this step up is quite sharp to touch, this part, and the barrel is more or less flat. There is a step down of a millimeter or so which ends in this section of the barrel. Incidentally, this section is designed to hold the cap securely posted flush with the main body of the barrel. So I will write it unposted. Now let me open this section to see what is inside. Okay, so we have a classical plastic Parker converter supplied with this, and this gripping section is actually, this is a matte finish and this is a polished section, and this is actually one metal piece. This is one metal piece, and the threads of the metal at this end actually meets the threads at the barrel end in plastic finish. So again, as is the case with the beta, this section remains the weakest part of the Vector Metallix. In other words, repeated screwing and unscrewing will make this section stress prone, leading to cracks in future. In fact, we do have users complaining that with regard to the Vector Metallix, cracks have developed at this end, right? So this is the Parker Vector Metallix in a fine nibbed version. We will now ink up both these pens, the Parker Beta and the Vector Metallix, and take a writing sample with the pens. We begin with the writing sample from the Beta first. So as I have said, I have put in the supplied cartridge in this pen, and we will see how the pen fares. Well, this is a fine nib, but I find that it writes on the drier side. it writes on the drier side. The nibs are fairly stiff, which means there would be very little scope for nib width variations. The slant strokes are slightly finer than the down strokes or the up strokes, but this is a very dry writer, and at the same time I do detect just that hint of a feedback that borders on scratchiness with this nib. I understand that these nibs are mass produced. Yes, there is a hint of a scratchiness. So one way to overcome this or to lessen this feeling of scratchiness would be perhaps to use a wetter ink with the fine version of the Parker Beta. A wetter ink will significantly buffer this feeling of friction that we have between the nib and the paper. Incidentally, the paper that I am using is a 100 GSM fountain pen friendly paper, so a wetter ink would perhaps buffer this feeling of scratchiness with the Parker Beta. But I understand that given the price point at which these pens are sold, and this is a mass market product, clearly we cannot expect a pen or a nib that is molded perfectly to the highest standards. So this is with regard to the Parker Beta in the premium gold version, and now we look at the Parker Vector Metallix. This also is in a fine nib, so let me see how it writes. This is slightly wetter. This is slightly wetter than the Beta Premium, though it is also in a fine nibbed version. Yes, as we can see, compared to this is a wet pen. With regard to flexes, no, there are no flexes whatsoever. In other words, calligraphy styled nib width variations would not be possible too in this pen. But compared to the Parker Beta, the writing experience with the Vector is less feedbacky or less scratchy, and yes, the writing experience is an improved one with the Vector Metallix compared to the Beta. In fact, one aspect of the Parker Vector Metallix which I would like to comment is the grip section may appear too thin for hands which are average sized or which are perhaps a tad bigger compared to the Parker Beta. So this is one aspect which may bother users with larger than average hands. The grip section is fairly thin compared to the Parker Beta, and this pen is also posted very securely. So this is one positive with regard to this. But the grip section is matte finished chrome, but it may appear thin in larger than average hands. Otherwise, it's a fairly good writer, and at this price point it sells at around rupees 450 to 500 in this part of the world. So that will approximate to around $6 to $8 in US currency, and this is a pen that is eminently marketed as a beginner's pen, though I have seen personally writers, rather prolific writers of fountain pens, too, using the Parker Vector Metallix as an everyday carry. So this is all about the Parker Beta and the Parker Vector Metallix. The Beta version is sold in this part of the world, that is in the Indian market, at a price of around rupees 200, which translates to around $2.5 to $3 in US equivalents, and this pen is marketed at approximately twice the price of the Parker Beta. So compared to the other upmarket pens of Parker, both these pens are in fact best sellers at the lowest price range market, and I do recommend at least the Parker Vector Metallix rather than the Parker Beta Premium for those who may be using fountain pens for the first time, maybe in high school or at around that age. So these are the two pens. Whether I would recommend them or not, yes, definitely, but they are a value for money, and we should not expect features that we expect in above average priced fountain pens. They are everyday carries. They are meant to be used with a fair amount of roughness, if I may call it, but at the same time both these pens carry this weak point at this end, and usually within a couple of years of active use, this section in both the Parker Beta and the Vector Metallix may develop weakness or cracks. So this is Parker Beta and Parker Vector Metallix for you. Now it's up to individual users and their writing tastes to opt for these versions if they wish for everyday carry pens. Thank you all friends for watching. Keep watching, subscribing and sharing so that we can bring the best pen contents to you. Thank you once again.